Purple Hibiscus, 2003, is the debut novel of Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, acclaimed for its lyrical prose, coming-of-age narrative, and exploration of family, religion, and politics. Set in post-colonial Nigeria during a time of political turmoil, the novel is told through the eyes of 15-year-old Kambili Adichie, a shy and observant girl raised in a rigidly Catholic, patriarchal household. Adichie crafts a powerful story of personal and national awakening, examining the collision of tradition and modernity, silence and speech, oppression and resistance. The novel intricately weaves domestic abuse with themes of religious fanaticism, political instability, and the transformative power of freedom and love. Setting and context. Purple Hibiscus is set in Enugu, Nigeria, during a period of military dictatorship and social unrest. The political instability in the country parallels the oppressive atmosphere in the Adichie household, where strict order is maintained through religious extremism and fear. Part 1. Palm Sunday. The novel opens with a disturbing image. Kambili's brother Jaja refuses to take communion on Palm Sunday, an act of defiance that enrages their devout Catholic father, Eugene. This moment marks the beginning of a rupture in the family's strict structure. Kambili reflects on the recent past, setting the novel in a frame narrative. Part 2. Before Palm Sunday. Kambili recounts life under her father's rigid control. Eugene Adichie, or Papa, is a wealthy, influential businessman and newspaper publisher, celebrated for his philanthropy and courage in standing up to the corrupt government. However, in private, he is tyrannical and abusive, enforcing an extreme version of Catholicism. Kambili and Jaja live a regimented life dictated by strict schedules, religious observances, and academic excellence. Any deviation is punished severely. Kambili is terrified of her father, eager to please him, and deeply indoctrinated in his beliefs. Despite the fear, she admires his moral uprightness and his stance against corruption. He financially supports his community and funds The Standard, a newspaper critical of the government. Yet, his brutal treatment of his family, including beatings that leave their mother, Beatrice, miscarrying, reveals the tragic hypocrisy in his character. Visit to Nsukka, a new world. After their mother suffers another beating-induced miscarriage, Kambili and Jaja are sent to their auntie Ifoma's house in Nsukka. Ifoma, Eugene's widowed sister, is a university professor, raising her 3 children with intellectual freedom and joy, despite their modest means. This visit is transformative. In contrast to their father's repressive home, Ifoma's household is filled with laughter, debate, and affection. Kambili is exposed to a different form of Catholicism, one rooted in spirituality, not fear. She meets Father Amadi, a young, charismatic priest who inspires her to question her inherited beliefs. Slowly, Kambili begins to find her voice. She watches her cousin speak freely, joke, and express opinions. Though initially shy and reserved, she starts to smile, laugh, and think independently. The purple hibiscus plants in Ifoma's garden become a symbol of this freedom, rare, beautiful, and subversive. Confrontation and consequences. The children's newfound autonomy alarms Eugene, who pulls them back to Enugu. Tensions rise as Jaja becomes increasingly rebellious, and Kambili, though more cautious, begins to think critically about their father's authority. After a secret visit to their grandfather, Papa Nnukwu, who practices traditional religion and is viewed by Eugene as a heathen, Eugene punishes Kambili severely. He beats her until she is hospitalized. The violence further alienates the children and solidifies their emotional detachment from him. As the political situation in Nigeria worsens, Eugene's standard is bombed, and he is briefly arrested. Still, his focus remains on spiritual purity. Beatrice, long silenced and traumatized, begins to take drastic steps toward ending the cycle of abuse. Tragic turning point. Eventually, Beatrice poisons Eugene, causing his sudden death. The truth is never explicitly confirmed in the novel but is heavily implied. She is not arrested, but the household is permanently changed. Jaja takes the blame and is imprisoned. The final section of the novel flashes forward to a year after Eugene's death. Kambili and Beatrice visit Jaja in prison, where they hope for his release. Kambili is now more confident, reflective, and emotionally aware. She has found her voice and identity, shaped by trauma, resilience, and hope. Character analysis. Kambili Adichie. Kambili is a deeply introspective and sensitive narrator. At the novel's start, she is defined by silence, obedience, and fear. Her coming-of-age journey is one of internal liberation. Through exposure to alternative ways of living and thinking, Kambili slowly breaks free from her father's psychological grip. Her emotional and intellectual growth is subtle yet profound, marking a transformation from passivity to self-awareness. Jaja, Chukwuka Adichie. Jaja evolves from a quiet, obedient boy to a defiant figure who challenges his father's authority. His refusal to take communion initiates the family's transformation. Jaja's sense of justice and protectiveness over Kambili deepen throughout the novel. His imprisonment is a tragic but noble sacrifice, reinforcing his moral integrity. Eugene Adichie, Papa. Eugene is a complex figure, both villain and hero. Publicly, he is revered for his courage, charity, and progressive politics. Privately, he is tyrannical and brutal. His religious extremism stems from a desire to purify and perfect, but it leads to familial destruction. Adichie portrays Eugene with nuance, showing how colonialism, religion, and trauma can distort morality. Beatrice Adichie, Mama. Beatrice is a tragic character, graceful, enduring, and silent in the face of abuse. Her repeated miscarriages symbolize the toll of patriarchal violence. She eventually poisons Eugene, an act that is both a rebellion and a tragedy. Her quiet suffering and drastic action underscore the emotional and physical cost of domestic tyranny. Auntie Ifeoma. Ifeoma is the novel's moral and intellectual compass. As a strong, independent, and educated woman, she challenges traditional gender roles. Her home is a haven of love, free thought, and resilience. She encourages her children and niece and nephew to think critically, bridging faith with freedom. Ifeoma's departure to the U.S. underscores the theme of brain drain and loss of intellectual capital due to national instability. Father Amadi. Father Amadi introduces Kambili to a more compassionate and inclusive form of Catholicism. He is kind, charismatic, and respectful, fostering her emotional awakening. Their relationship, gentle and unconsummated, marks a turning point in Kambili's personal development. Themes and analysis. 1. Religion and fanaticism. Religion is central to the novel, particularly how Catholicism, when taken to extremes, can be weaponized. Eugene represents religious authoritarianism. His interpretation of faith justifies violence, repression, and alienation from indigenous culture. In contrast, Ifeoma and Father Amadi practice a compassionate, open-minded faith that promotes love and dignity. Adichie critiques how colonial religion can alienate individuals from their roots. Eugene rejects his father for practicing traditional religion, illustrating how Christianity, introduced by missionaries, fractures families and cultures. 2. Silence and voice. Silence pervades the Adichie household. Kambili and Beatrice speak rarely and in whispers. Their silence reflects the fear and trauma inflicted by Eugene. As Kambili visits Nsukka and begins to speak, the novel charts her journey toward voice and expression. Speech becomes an act of resistance, healing, and identity. Adichie suggests that silence can be a survival strategy but also a prison. The narrative itself, Kambili's inner monologue, is an attempt to reclaim her voice. 3. Freedom and oppression. Physical, emotional, and intellectual freedom are central to the novel's conflicts. Eugene's house is a gilded cage, beautiful, wealthy, but stifling. In contrast, Ifoma's home is modest but brims with freedom and laughter. Kambli's emotional journey parallels Nigeria's political condition, a struggle between dictatorship and democracy, silence and protest. The novel argues that true freedom requires both external conditions, safety, justice, and internal courage, voice, self-worth. 4. Family and patriarchy. Adichie explores the dynamics of family within a patriarchal society. Eugene's dominance reflects the entrenched gender roles and expectations. Beatrice's submissiveness and Kambli's obedience show how women internalize patriarchal control. Yet, resistance emerges in subtle ways. Beatrice's poisoning of Eugene, George's refusal to take communion, and Kambli's eventual confidence reveal the cracks in the patriarchal structure. 5. Political corruption and resistance. The novel mirrors Nigeria's national issues, military coups, government censorship, and instability. Eugene's Standard newspaper is a rare voice of truth in a corrupt environment, showing that resistance is possible but dangerous. The murder of Ade Coker, the editor, symbolizes the suppression of truth. Ifoma's forced resignation and eventual emigration highlight the erosion of intellectual and ethical spaces in Nigeria. The political serves as a backdrop for personal struggles, reinforcing the interconnectedness of public and private oppression. 6. Coming of age and personal growth. Purple Hibiscus is a classic Bildungsroman. Kambli's transition from repression to self-expression mirrors many adolescent experiences but is intensified by trauma. Her growth is emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. She begins as a product of fear but gradually becomes an agent of hope and change. Adichie avoids romanticizing this journey. Growth comes through suffering, loss, and self-confrontation. Yet, by the end, Kambili looks toward the future with cautious optimism. Symbols. Purple hibiscus. The rare purple hibiscus flowers in Ifoma's garden symbolize freedom, change, and hope. They contrast with the red hibiscus in Enugu, which symbolize control and uniformity. The purple bloom represents Kambli's awakening and the possibility of a new Nigeria, vibrant, free, and just. Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday marks the novel's rupture, a rebellion cloaked in ritual. George's refusal to take communion disrupts the family's routine and foreshadows the unraveling of Eugene's control. The event also signals spiritual awakening and the questioning of religious orthodoxy. Silence and laughter. Silence represents fear, repression, and survival, while laughter represents freedom and healing. The journey from silence to laughter, especially in Kambli's story, is symbolic of personal and political emancipation. Critical reception and legacy. Purple Hibiscus received critical acclaim for its rich language, emotional depth, and thematic complexity. It was shortlisted for the Orange Prize and won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Best First Book. Critics praised Adichie's ability to handle sensitive subjects, abuse, religion, politics, with grace and insight. The novel has become a staple in global literature curricula, especially in discussions on post-colonialism, gender, and youth narratives. It established Adichie as a major voice in contemporary literature, a role she continues to fulfill with subsequent works like Half of a Yellow Sun and Americana. Conclusion. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's Purple Hibiscus is a masterful exploration of the personal and political landscapes of post-colonial Nigeria. Through the lens of a young girl's awakening, Adichie examines the impact of religious fanaticism, domestic abuse, political corruption, and gender roles. The novel is both an intimate family drama and a profound social commentary. At its heart, it is a story about finding voice in a world that seeks to silence you, about nurturing rare flowers of hope in hostile soil. As Kambili journeys from silence to speech, from fear to love, Adichie reminds us of the resilience of the human spirit and the redemptive power of freedom.